Welcome back to the channel, everybody. First and foremost, thank you for tuning in to this additional update on this Nano Reef. For the record, this is my first reef tank ever. It's been quite the learning experience, quite the journey, and coming from the freshwater side of things with over a decade of experience, this has been quite the eye-opener to what is possible. My goal really is to expand the hobby, get people more passionate, and I feel like this nano definitely did that for me, and it's been extremely rewarding. I'm very excited to show this tank off because, in my humble opinion, it is extremely epic nano tank. Haven't seen one this crazy in a while. Um, as far as today, we're going to go over just some key learnings, tips to my success. We'll do some equipment overviews and we'll kind of run through the footage of the tank. We'll also look at my insane Gani collection and we'll wrap things up with future plans and some announcements. Let's roll the footage. All right, so we're going to be looking at this tank, what it looks like today, but before we do that, we're going to actually jump back and see some of the previous iterations of the tank. Absolutely very colorful. You'll notice this tank is very overstocked with coral. I do end up moving a lot of the LPS and some of the Ganis that were getting too big. Here's some shots of some of the SPS that were added. Tricolor, PC Rainbow, a couple others. For livestock in this tank, there's quite a few fish, paraclowns. We got a fire goby, cardinal. There was a Blenny in here, but he was getting, and there also used to be a blue damsel, but the damsel is now in the tank behind me, and the damsel was bullying a lot of the fish, so I had to pull him out of the 20 and put him in his own tank. I've been collecting Zoas and various Ganis for quite a while. You'll see some of the closer shots. Here's the tank all in white. Just kind of want to show what it looks like under more of a white lighting. I really like the negative aquascape that I do have in this tank. As far as equipment goes, I do show it later in the video, but I went through a lot of changes how I'm maintaining alkalinity. I did mention in the previous update that I was using Alpha Reef, and then I actually switched to Calc just because I was having some issues with low pH. I did do some things to mitigate that, like running my skimmer out intake line outside, which did help, but very minimal. That's the other challenge with these all-in-one tanks. In hindsight, I probably would have did a 30 to 40 gallon, maybe long, and drilled it for a sump. Equipment is just way easier to find when you're not limited to the small back chamber. Obviously, as the tank is going through these iterations, you can see that I think it is a Hellfire Gani there on the right. It just starts to get very dominant in this tank, and it was taken over, so I did move that out. There's a good shot of some of the Ganis. You got the Hollywood Knights, the Amaze Balls. Amaze Balls Gani is probably my absolute favorite, and of course, it literally grows the slowest. I have an OG Glitter Bomb Gani in this tank, and it's like tripled in size, while the Amaze Balls has probably barely grown. Probably has to do with how expensive that coral is. It just freaking grows tremendously slow. And it also was going through some setbacks. This tank did have some bacterial challenges. I was running UV in the beginning of this tank and I opted out to turn it off, and surprisingly the health of most of the LPS in the tank seemed to improve. Again, anecdotal evidence, but I had some spouts of brown jelly. I did some bacteria dosing, and I also got some reef rubble from Aqua Biomics and kind of added that to the tank to try to attempt to stabilize the microbiome. And I do think it did help. I noticed more of a change when my pH was higher as well as when my UV was off. Both of those did not happen at the same time, but I did notice a noticeable improvement in the health of the coral. I have been pretty lucky. I have not had any illness with the fish in this tank. But some of the challenges were actually fluctuations in my alkalinity when I was using Alpha Reef as well as when I was using Calc. Because I was using the Calc Glosser in the ATO, number one, it's a little bit risky because it's very brutal on pumps, so you're putting yourself at risk for failure, right? But at the same time, different days, different temperature fluctuations mean evaporation is changing constantly, which means some days you're getting like a pretty large dose and your alkalinity might spike, and some days you might not get enough. So it wasn't as consistent as I liked. So I did end up transitioning to a DIY three part in this tank. And after that, it was a little bit of a rough transition. I am using soda bicarb, or actually, I think I'm using the hydroxide. So it's really caustic, real high pH. So you have to be really careful how you dose it, especially in a small system. Some of the things that I would say have helped this tank a lot was definitely moving to a more stable dosing system. It's easier for me to maintain the macro elements in this tank. Um, I actually even started using in that shot. I'm only using three dosing pumps. I'm actually using the fourth because the other thing that has really helped this tank take off is actually getting my nitrates off of zero. So for many, many months, I was struggling no matter how much I would feed. This tank was pretty much nitrate locked, where my phosphates would get out of control and my nitrates would basically stay bottom down. Now, obviously, I do have a lot of live rock. There's a good amount of sand, and I am running biomedia in the back with some carbon. Um, I personally like to run the carbon too. I know that's like there's a lot of opinions on carbon. For me, I think it keeps the SPS a little bit happier, as well as maybe potentially mitigate any coral warfare. Obviously, this tank, I think at max count, I counted 140 different pieces or species variety of coral in this tank. I did end up moving most of the acans out of this tank. Some zoas, as well as some of the other bigger LPS that were getting too large for the system, just to give a little bit more space and mitigate any stinging coral warfare. Did have some casualties, unfortunately. For those of you who pay attention to detail, you'll notice that my scalemia in this tank in a couple of the shots is really rough. It unfortunately got stung because my urchin decided to pick it up and drop it right into a mushroom, and it took me about a day to see it because I was working, and basically it just ripped off all the flesh off of the scully. So the scully is slowly healing, but they grow very slow. So that's just kind of been a waiting game. I did have some mushrooms bleach out. Here's a shot of my apex. As far as parameters go in this tank, I'll just throw up my dashboard for my Apex. My pH is really good. Ever since running that line outside, um, there is a pretty nice peak of the day around 8.4, 8.5 sometimes. My Alk's pretty consistent, anywhere between 8 and 9. Um, I've mentioned a few times about this tank, how I'm going through some struggles. One of the struggles in this tank, and you can see me here kind of picking at, is actually vermidid snails. Um, I was feeding this tank pretty heavy, just because there was a lot of LPS in it, and I basically exploded the population of vermidids as well as some other not exactly sure the species of filter feeders that are in this tank, but they kind of look like a small barb. They're not. They're definitely not sponges. They're some type of filter feeding invertebrate. So I have reduced pretty much all coral feeding. In the very beginning, it was actually, everyone tells you to feed your corals, but definitely do not recommend feeding your tank in the first like 6 months to a year if it's a nano, just because it's very easy to overload the tank with nutrients. I did previously mention I was dealing with like super high phosphates for a while. Super high, I mean like zero 0.8 to 1 ppm. Um, there's some good shots of those gonnies in the front as well as that tracky. That thing is just exploding in this tank. Here's some good, more updated shots of some of that SPS. Starting to get some good growth. A couple of the pieces are really ready to take off, um, especially that PC Rainbow and that Tricolor. They're definitely been growing quite a bit. The Walt Disney's kind of still settling in that tank, and that red glitter Gonny there is my absolute favorite Gonny of all time. It's extremely hard to find that thing, by the way, so really rare. When I seen it, I really wanted to pick it up. Oh god, every time I look at this tank, it just makes me happy. um, do have some pretty cool mushrooms in there too. Some OG bounces. Got the Doughboys. Got a Jawbreaker. The St. Thomas mushroom. Unfortunately, my magic carpet bleached out right there. Uh, got some nice plates. Got a Rainbow Disastrous plate. The Amazeball is a little closed up right there. It's not doing too happy, but in some of the later shots, you'll see it's a little more opened up. My OG bounce actually did not drop a baby, but when I was moving it off the rock work, there was a little piece of the foot left over, and it just pretty much fragged itself from that little foot. And so that was kind of cool. Looking to grow that thing out pretty big. There's the setup. I am running a battery backup on this tank. I got the Trident, the whole Neptune setup. For lighting, there's the Kessil 360X's. I'm using I think it's an in clear filter roller. That thing is great. I was previously using a reef and roll, but I was having some issues with it. I didn't like it as much. It didn't fit as well as I wanted it to in this tank. The in clear is great. It's really robust. It's got like a pretty reliable motor from my experience. The skimmer I'm running in this tank is like a Mag-tool. Forgot the model number. Excuse me. I'm running BRS's heater in this tank, the titanium with a Inkbird Wi-Fi controller. That's also redundantly plugged into the Apex. Auto top off. I think I'm using like some cheapy auto top off from Amazon. I forget the exact name. But it seems to be relatively reliable. I do have a backup pump for it if that does fail. Um, Another tip, as far as like managing salinity in a small tank, um, it's pretty ruthless, honestly, from a swing perspective, when you don't have a automatic filter roller. I was running socks on this tank, and the problem is they clog, and then you get a buildup of volume basically in the main display, and then you basically start running your ATO all the time. So back when I was running the calc, that was a whole nother issue. That was exacerbating some problems in the tank. Things are a lot more stable now that I'm doing the DIY balling method. So it's 3 part. Um, Things have been a lot better, more stable. The filter roller reliability's increased, so my salinity's staying pretty stable, especially since I'm doing the part C. I'm not really seeing a rise in my salinity at all. It's pretty stable. Um, I don't really check my parameters as far as nitrates or phosphates as much as I used to. They're relatively stable at this point. But I'm really excited for the future plans. I definitely want to upgrade the tank, and I'm kind of conflicted on drilling a tank or getting a reef ready system. I do like the idea of doing a full custom build, and that is something that I'm kind of methodically planning out as I go. I do have a few other systems running right now, so that's going to be interesting to balance just the workload, right? But I really do appreciate you guys tuning in for this update, and I do have some very, very exciting plans for the future. So take care. Thank you.